take a look. College football playoffs released their first 12-team rankings. Oregon was 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Miami 4. But the first-round byes go to the conference championship teams that they're projecting. So right now you got Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and Brigham Young as the byes. And you have, Ohio State would play Boise State. And Ohio State would be the 5th seed. What stood out? What did you notice? What did you anything surprise you with the first rankings that were released?
No, I think honestly those 12 teams for the moment are the right 12. I think the only thing I would do is for me, if you push out those overall rankings that they had, like BYU's in that 4th spot because they're projected as the Big 12 champion, but they're sitting at number 9 right now. The only thing I would do is probably switch them and Penn State at 6, right? Because there's an argument, say, for a team like Indiana where they've played a soft schedule, and I understand that they've dominated a soft schedule, but that's not the case for BYU. I think the Big 12 is getting a little underrated here. They have a big win at SMU. They got a near 30-point win over Kansas State, who's still ranked, I believe, number 18 or 19. So I think BYU is the one team is a little bit low, and I would switch them with Penn State. I would have BYU at 6 and Penn State at 9. But otherwise, I think they got the right 12 teams, and I think for the most part, the rankings are solid.
Are you surprised at the way the Big Ten is hit? Normally it's the SEC, and this year – the SEC has kind of cannibalized each other a little bit. The Big Ten looks really strong.
Yeah, it does. Those top 4 are really good. They're all really good. Oregon has a very inside track, to that number 1 seed. Ohio State, just like it's ranked there, they could be the highest ranked team that doesn't win a conference title, or Oregon will be in that 5 spot if Ohio State can find a way to win the conference. And then you got Penn State, who – I think they might be the biggest question to me. They still have a couple of decent games to get through, but we saw they played against Ohio State. We've seen them get off to a lot of slow starts in their games, but I think Penn State and Indiana. Penn State, if they take care of business and get to 11-1, I think they're still getting in. And Indiana, the same thing. If they get to at least 11-1, I believe they're getting in with as much as they've dominated everybody on their schedule so far. I'm very curious to see how they play this weekend against a Michigan team that, look, hasn't gone great for them, but they still have a lot of pride and a really good defense.
Yeah, they're like, I saw that they're like 2 touchdown favorites being Indiana, and I was like, whoa. And again, as you said, though, they're running it up on everybody they play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, this Indiana team, don't be fooled by any strength of schedule metric or anything like that. They have wiped the floor with everybody in front of them. They are really explosive offensively. They've got a very good defense, especially in their front 7. Curt Cignetti's got – I do think they're one of the best teams in college football. I think eventually we will probably see them as one of the 12 best teams. These next 2 weeks are going to tell us a lot, though. Michigan is still a tough opponent with a really good defensive line that could give them problems. And then you have the big one in 2 weeks after a bye week at Ohio State, which if we see them dominate Michigan this week, I think it's a very realistic chance that they could go into Ohio State and win. That's how good I think Indiana is. I don't think this is a mirage.
All right. What games you paying attention to this week before I let you go?
So on top of the Indiana game, the 2 big SEC games this week, I think first you've got Alabama going down to LSU. I think the loser of that game is going to be out. I don't think there's enough left in the rest of their schedule to make up for having 3 losses. So I think you're talking about a de facto playoff game taking place Saturday night at Death Valley. And the other one, Georgia and Ole Miss. And I think the big story here is that Ole Miss is really on their last legs. Similar to those first 2 teams I just mentioned, if they get a 3rd loss, I don't think they have enough big wins on their schedule to get into the playoff at 9-3. Ole Miss is fighting for their life, and Bama and LSU are fighting each other for it, essentially as an elimination game.
What have you thought about Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin?
Oh, it's tough. This is going to be the week of all weeks because right now their character is they're really good, but they don't win the big games, right? And this week at home against Georgia, they're still an underdog, of course, a 3 or 4 point dog against Georgia, but they've gotten hot the last couple weeks. From what I've seen the last 2 weeks, I do think they have a chance to win. It's a lot better than what we saw the 3 weeks before that when they lost 2 out of 3. So I'm very in between on Ole Miss. It's one of these moments, just like it was last year. You have to beat one of these elite teams. You can't get by only beating softer teams in the bottom half of the SEC and dominating them and putting up stats. This is a game, I think it's one of the biggest games. It's probably the biggest game of Lane Kiffin's tenure so far because it's the one team that he has to prove he can find a way to beat instead of just, losing in the trenches and getting dominated like they did last year.